Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands high from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl with the bright red hair.
Well, welcome back to Victory Podcast, a podcast produced by everyone's favorite pie shop, Victory Pie Company. Every episode of this podcast, we'll be discussing all things small business, life, and of course, pie. I'm your host, Bailey, and I'm joined by Victory Pie's owner and founder, Sheila Blue. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Bailey.
Glad to have you. Well, this week, our topic for our podcast is podcast number 2 in the books. And our topic this week is small business and mom life. And I am so excited to finally be getting into kind of the nitty gritty of things with you, Sheila. I feel like I have so much myself just to learn from this topic alone. But you know so much more about this than I ever could. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what we're going to discuss today, where we're headed?
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm excited about this podcast too. This is a topic I'm super passionate about. And so it's really about my kids and what I learned, I think, what I did before VPC, what I did before Victory Pie, and how so much of what I was already doing played into being a business owner. And I didn't even know it at the time, I think. So, and my kids and how I navigated through where I was coming from and where I was going as a new business owner. And just a new territory that I had never walked in before. And it was kind of cool. So when I started out, when Victory Pie started, thinking of ages of my guys, 2017, I still had 2 at home. One was finishing high school. My middle son, my oldest son was already out of the house, and in the Coast Guard. So he was gone. Yeah. And then I had one at home graduating high school and another one in high school, my youngest son, Sam. So they were freshmen, senior, and out the house when I started. So, and believe it or not, I had homeschooled for 18 years. So homeschooling my boys, and still was at that time, when everything started, and, with our story, just things being turned upside down, prior to that, but just, coming from that homeschool atmosphere and then incorporating now, starting this new business and balancing both was definitely a new challenge. But them being a little bit older, looking back, that definitely made it easier. If they were 3, 5, and 7, don't know that it would have gone the way it went. Two different seasons of life.
Self-sufficient when you got your start, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. They were definitely there. And, I had done other things before. And again, we were working, and I was that homeschool mom too, who made my kids get up in the morning, get dressed, pledge allegiance, do all that thing. So I was that homeschool mom. So, there was that structure, and there was that, but I think one of the things that, I didn't realize, just in being a stay-at-home mom and raising my kids, whether I was stay-at-home or I had worked out of the house, just raising my kids, and now seasons of life leading up to what I did, I really had no idea till I got into business and got to a place where I had to hire other people and team members to work with us, how much of what I had done at home all those years with my sons was going to come into play in business. And by that, I mean just working with personalities, all the different personalities. Honestly, never thought about it because, home is home. Those are your kids, those are your families, but all those different personalities, really working with them on a day-to-day and understanding how they interpret things, and understanding how I communicated with them and they communicated with me and my husband. Learning those languages, I was going to have to do that in business. And I didn't even realize that really at the time, which was interesting. And I've come to learn, and I tell young moms this now, and people in sales, or people that think, oh, I don't want to work in the front of the house because that's sales. And I'm not good at sales. Everybody's in sales. Any mom that tries to get her kid to eat peas is in sales. That's what it is. So we're constantly, you want those shoes and if I get this and finagle that budget and I do this and you present it, hey, I can afford everything is sales. So
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much of what I had already been doing in life translated, and some of it made easier and some of it just like clicked. And I was like, I've been doing this. I can do this. I've been doing this at home. All I got to do is do it in this forum now. It just changed modes. It didn't change what it was. And for me, when I realized that, it was cool. And it was also a little choked up, empowering. That's not a word I use very often for myself, but it was empowering. And I would love to encourage young moms who think they're stuck or think they're just at home and this season of life feels like they're not using their skill sets, or I'm better than this, or I'm driven, I want to do more. And yeah, you will, and you'll be there. And don't shortchange yourself on what you're learning by being there right now. And I think it was really empowering to know that all that me pouring into my family, I had poured into myself not knowing it. And those were things that were going to serve me now as a woman in business, serve me now as someone who gave people jobs, serve me now as someone in leadership, that knew patience, that knew self-control, that knew understanding, that had wisdom. And I got all that by what I was doing just in my family life. And it's encouraging to know that wherever you are, you can bloom and take something from it. So I think that was huge for me in business. And I love that all those years translated into something. They were not for nothing, and they weren't empty, and they weren't, I used to tell people I got my paychecks in, peanut butter kisses and, handprints and things on the windows. And I didn't know how many years later that would translate to real paychecks, and being able to give other people paychecks. And it was just, it's funny how that can translate. And when you're looking for it, that you can see it. So, it's all valuable. All of it's valuable. Everything we walk in their seasons of life, I believe, have value.
Yeah, nothing's ever lost, right? I mean,
Mm-mm.
I think about that often. I've had like a handful of jobs throughout my life, and I always have felt like every job has prepared me for what I'm going to do in the next job. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraged by what you're saying, because at this stage of my life, I'm 29 and I'm just starting to think about having kids and what it looks like to be a mom. And it feels like this great like calling on my life. And I feel like all the jobs I've had have prepared me to be a mom, and I'm so excited to do that. And I've been talking to my own mom about that a lot lately, and she said like coming out of the professional world into be, because I would really like to be like a stay-at-home mom and kind of do what you've
Mm-hmm.
done, Sheila, and homeschool and be with my kids if I'm able to. And she said coming out of like being in a business world, which I know you did too before you had kids, and then being a stay-at-home mom is a bit of a challenge in a lot of ways, because it is so thankless. At a
Yes.
job you can, there's all kinds of rewards and accolades you get for each step of progress that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like not a pay raise, there are ways that you
Right.
see it being successful, and you have kind of this feedback coming to you from the people that you work with, or the company that you work with, or whatever. um, and when you have kids, like you're pouring your whole heart into that, your whole, like all day in and day out, you're pouring your heart into that. And a lot of times you don't have that feedback coming to you. I mean, you don't have like, your
Oh,
kids don't know that you're working so hard. They just know that mom fed me because that's what mom does. And they just know
right.
mom taught me because that's what mom does. Like, and so it must have been interesting for you to have, because you worked in business before having kids, right?
I did actually. My education is in the legal field. So funny enough, that's what I did before. I was a paralegal for years before I had my kids, and I, I had different ideals when I was younger. And after I had my first son, and I was actually, I was still working. And then it was when I was pregnant with my second son, actually, I was making 2/3 of our income. And honestly, it was a huge leap of faith for me to go, I'm going to stay home. And it was a huge decision to make. Like you say, it was scary. And what I had, and my husband and I had choices to make. And, he did too, with what he was doing with his job and what he was going to take on if I did stay home. Um, and there was a sense of loss in the beginning, in the sense of like, man, I was doing this and now this, and it's like I'm just changing diapers every day, and we're going to the park, and we're, and all these things. And but one of the things that surprised me when I switched from that season of, like you say, business and maybe corporate America and those things, into being a stay-at-home mom in that season, what really surprised me was I have always been driven. I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial mindset, but I've always been driven. I've probably been working since I was about 13, to be honest with you. Like, that's just who I am. That's the type of person I am. But in being home and working your life into these little people, I kind of stood around. I felt like I stood in the room and sort of spun around, like, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? I'm lost. And, I remember one of my favorite stories. I tell my kids this, or any young mom this, but it was like, anybody, when I had my first son, I remember standing there crying and just going, I'm responsible for him. If I don't feed him, he doesn't get fed. I'm thinking, I did some cool things in the legal field, and I'm like, I'm sitting here freaking out about, a person. And it's like, but like you say, it's, again, sometimes when you're in it, you don't see it, but what I had done had led me to that. And I had the skill sets. I had the abilities to take care. I could do it. I just had to work into it. And then being home after I got home, when my second son was born and I decided to stay home full time, what was interesting was I had been so busy and go for so long. I never had the time to tap into the creative side of what I do, really, because I was so busy doing. And I had the opportunity. I was home. There was downtime. There was time with my kids. I really began to tap into the more artsy side of what I do. And I really didn't even know what I was capable of. And I actually used to have a faux finishing painting business for a while too, believe it or not. But I'm like, used to do murals, used to paint, and people were like, my own family was like, where did that come from? I'm like, I don't know. I guess I just finally had time. But it was kind of cool because even in that, I think in what I do now, I didn't realize I could be creative. I didn't realize if I sat with myself long enough, sometimes in the quiet, it actually gave me time to think about what I wanted to do and get creative. And it was, again, that season of life just gave me that opportunity. And then I had a third, and then it got too busy again. So I got a little crazy.
And that's like running a whole restaurant. Once you have 3 kids.
Oh my gosh, it was like 3 full-time jobs. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, like when you move into motherhood, I think that it can be pretty thankless. Obviously, you are producing, like you are doing something that's going to bear so much fruit for not just your future and your children's future, but hopefully for the world's future. I know that's true of you, Sheila. I've met all of your sons, and I know that you and your husband worked really, really hard to raise good, strong men in a world that it's hard to do that in. And so I know that they are not just impacting their own lives, but impacting the world around them. And so, like, shout out to the mamas who are listening to this podcast right now, who are at home with their kids. And I know that we live like in a world that if you're not producing something, specifically producing some kind of income stream, it feels like you're not doing enough. It feels like you're not doing anything. And that's just not the case. Like we see you out there just working day in and day out to make the world better and leave a legacy.
Absolutely. I love that. And you're absolutely right. And it did feel thankless for a lot of years. It felt like you said, there's no progress report for that. There's no monthly review. There's none of that that's saying, what am I doing? How am I doing? And even in that, I realized later as my sons got older, and now as they're adults, and now I'm a grandma, I've even got a grandson, but it's like, even now, what's cool about that is, and in the cafe, I encouraged moms that you would come in with their little gun. I'm so sorry, this, that. I said, oh, no. What you are doing is the most important job in the world. And I tell you this, I'm on the other side. What you're doing and what you're investing and what you are pouring into now, I promise you will yield great things later on. And I'm getting to see that now. Like you said, all my sons are grown men, and they're having their own children now. And it's beautiful to watch, to see all those things you poured in now come full circle and see the kind of men they are and the kind of fathers they are. Um, it's 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 not for naught. You're right. It feels thankless, but I promise you, hang in there, because it takes a little while to see the yields, but it's the most beautiful thing in the world when you get to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole world
Definitely.
gets to be affected by it. And like I
Yeah.
said, I had the privilege of knowing all of Sheila's sons, and like one of them lives in the town that I live in, which is great, and is married to somebody who I also know and I also adore. And I just see every day the impact that they have on the world around them. And I just think good parenting, not enough can be said about it. And moms specifically who just pour their hearts into their kids, I think it's a beautiful thing. So
Absolutely.
on like the business side of that, then, so you were in the business world and then you stepped
Mhm.
out of it, took this leap of faith to sacrifice the income stream so that you could stay home with the boys,
Yep.
homeschooled, full-time mom. And
Hmm.
then towards the end of their high school years, I know Eli was already graduated, but towards the end, as they became adults, you launched Victory Pie Company, which is the reason we get to sit here today and talk.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a family affair too. What did that look like for your boys who were still in the house? What did that look like for you to start a business while you're still raising them? What was that like?
It absolutely did. Yeah, lots of chicken pot pie with the practices. No, it was a lot of, it was definitely a family effort, and it was restructuring, because with starting that business, now my time where it had been focused on them and what we were doing, and we weren't quite finished in that season, but it was all of us rallying together. And I think one of the beautiful things that I got to see too was having spent the time pouring into them. That's where that you see it later on. Um, they were all, and I'm not going to say, oh, they were all so great and happy and mom, let me do this for you. No, it was like, they were teenagers, it's like, oh, we got to go again. But at the same, you know what? They never not supported me. They always supported me, and they showed up. And if I needed their help, they did it. And we did it as a team and together. And it looked like, when there was caterings, help cater, it looked like, helping me lug dough from here to there. It looked like, helping put dry ice in the pie cooler for the farmer's market, setting up the tent. My youngest son, Sam, he was the youngest, so he actually did the most. He was there from the day we posted that first tent out in that farmer's market. And it was cool. He knew the ins and out of my business as well as I did. Like, that's how it translated. He was my right hand man. He was my shadow. I mean, and he was going on, and he ended up actually going in to play basketball in high school. So we were back and forth between practice and the making pies, practice selling pies, practice. So it was like this constant back and forth. It just became part of our life, just like homeschooling and all the things we did became part of our lives. It kind of became part of our life, and it was definitely a group effort, a team. And my husband as well, being on the fire department, his days off were spent helping, schlepping, putting up tents. And when we opened the restaurant, it was hanging the signs, helping, install the equipment, all the things we had to do. So it was really cool to see them help support and continually support in making that happen. And funny enough, my youngest son, I've watched him in his jobs and move on, and as he's moving into his career, and he'll come back reluctantly and tell me, he'll be like, okay, thanks. I'm really glad I worked for you. I'm really glad I learned this, because this happened at work today, and I knew this. Or his superiors were like, great job. How do you know that? And he's like, because I work for Victory Pie. And it was like, it's just these great lessons that got learned. And I think just by osmosis, me running this business, they learn so much watching it, learn so much just having their hands in it. It really translated to them as young men in the real world. And it's kind of cool to see that too, and they are there to applaud the successes. And they were also there to give me a hug in the failures. And there was lots of those. There was lots of hard days. There was days where I wanted to cry, days I didn't want to talk to anybody, days where I didn't feel good, days where, and you know what? It was you want to play a game of Uno and have a bowl of soup? Yep, sure. Those are the thing. It was just like, we just don't talk. We just don't talk. We made hot chocolate and maybe played a game, or we're just gonna get through the day, and it's like that was okay too. So it was ups and downs, and there's a lot of downs in entrepreneurship too. And it was sweet that we could all write them out together.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's a really sweet thought. I've worked for Victory Pie Company since 2020, I think, since 2020. So going on 4 years now. And I will say, like I said, in the last decade of my life, I've had a handful of different jobs, worked for a handful of different companies, and working for Victory Pie, doing like marketing and stuff. I have done that alongside working other jobs. And I do think that, Sheila, you bring in a really unique perspective to owning a business and to being out in kind of the marketplace, from having been a mom. I feel like every day that I got to physically go into Victory Pie to work for that first year I worked there, it does feel like this family environment, that you're not just stepping in to do a job, you're stepping in to be a part of something bigger. And that's part of why I've continued to work for Victory Pie through COVID and through the craziness, and then moving away. And I'm so grateful that you've kept me on. But it's because it feels like something bigger than just making pie. And it feels like you've taken this philosophy of how you raised your boys, and brought it into how you run a business. And so it's become a legacy. It's become something more than a business. Would you agree with that?
I'd absolutely agree. And I think with that too, and I've loved, and thank you. And I've always loved having you on. You're amazing. You don't ever get to leave. But I think it's been cool too, because that has translated in with our team members that have come in, and some of those younger ones and teens. And, not everybody's in the best season of their life when they're in certain jobs. And we had that opportunity to be a safe space to learn new things, grow confidence, do things, all those things I got to pour into when I learned, to being a stay-at-home mom, but also that those can translate in business. They can work in business too. And you can offer a hand up to somebody, even in a work environment, in a professional way, and in a way that it's been cool too, to see some of our team members come in, maybe be struggling in one area and leave just soaring in that area, or doing something. So, and that's like family. I see that like family, when family member hurts, we all have that, no matter what happens in life. Family's family, and you rally and you help and you do. And I feel like that's what we did at Victory Pie. And that's like, if somebody was down, what's up? What can we do to help? Or also, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. We're here for you. We've got your back. And then to watch somebody even gain a confidence where they never had it before, or they didn't have it in the environment they were in, and to leave with that, and then step out of Victory Pie and into something new that was going to take them into somewhere great, that was part of their future and their passion, was the neatest thing to see. And that's the part to me that feels like the mom who watches their kid go to college, or watches them graduate, watches them get the dream job. It was the same thing for me with each person that did that, each team member where we were. And I'm like, it absolutely, I feel like it translated just the way you described it.
Yeah, it almost feels like some of the lessons that you learned, I think, in being a mom and then coming into business, feel very counter to what like the business world would say to do. Because,
yes.
And I want to ask you this question. I know we'll have like a kind of a longer podcast dedicated to just this coming question, but speaking personally from when I came to work for you, when I started in 2020, I was coming out of I was coming out of and walking into the probably most painful, difficult season of my life thus far. I was leaving a job that I cared about. I felt humiliated. I felt really alone. I felt really desperate. And Sheila, you didn't really have any reason to reach out to me other than you kind of knew what was going on from like a bird's eye view. And I remember you asking me to dinner, and I think we went to like a Chili's. And you shared a little bit about your personal life and your story and said, I just feel like God is telling me to hire you. Do you want to come work for me? And at that time I was so down and out, and I could not imagine anyone being so kind to me in that space. I didn't feel like I deserved kindness in that space. And you were this person who sat across the table from me and said, no, there's a place for you at the table at Victory Pie Company. And I'm like getting choked up talking about it, because I really did feel, I felt like no one saw me, and then there was you, and you like kind of took this chance on a person that didn't really make any sense to take, but you did that, and it's similar to you taking the leap of faith to step into raising your boys and to being at home with them. I've seen you in your time owning and running Victory Pie take similar leaps of faith, where it feels like the only reason I'm doing this is because I feel a calling to do so. So what role has faith played in this journey of this business?
I would say it's at the forefront, honestly, and it's huge. My faith, I've walked in my faith. I'm a, follower of Christ, and I've walked in that since I was 7 years old. And in that, so when I am seeking out what to do, and I a lot of times I'll say, oh, it's that gut feeling, and for me, that's my faith. I feel like that's God saying that to me. Like the day we had our conversation, and it's just like, I read my Bible, I pray, and I feel like when that moves on me, one thing I've learned is don't always trust your gut. That's what I say, especially in a situation like that. And for me, that's my faith too. And that's, I don't believe that I would not only not be here today, but I wouldn't be where I am today without my faith in God, without going to the Word. For me, it's everything. It's real truth. It's where I draw wisdom from, real wisdom. And it's everything's in there. If I have a problem in business, a problem in with relation to anything in life, people, anything, it's all in there. And for me, that's my map. That's my roadmap. And I think it plays a huge part in it. And it played a huge part in me being a mom and a stay-at-home mom too, and being intuitive to emotions and feelings and how people learn in life and all the things. And I know that business is business, and I know some people might not agree with me, but I think if we don't tap into that in our lives, I think we miss out. We can severely miss out on some really great things, blessings for ourselves and for others, by not. But my faith is everything to me.
Yeah. Well, fully agree. I mean, I know I would have missed out on being a part of what Victory Pie was all about. And also just, I feel like you were such an extension of God's grace to me in that period, and that's continued to be over the years. And so I agree. I would have missed out too if you didn't trust God in even the little things like that and taking the chance on somebody. And so as we wrap up our podcast, just an encouragement to the mamas out there who are at home with their kids, and it feels thankless and it feels like you're not producing. You are. And we know that your day in, day out with your kiddos, your prayer for them, your love for them, your care for them, we know that that's what the world is made of. It's what makes every generation better is parents and moms who pour into and love their babies. So we see you, we're with you. And then if you're starting a business, or if you're thinking about starting a business, just know that over at Victory Pie, we are rooting for you. We see you. We know it's hard. Sheila Blue has just years worth of wisdom to share. And so as we go through these podcasts over the next several weeks, we'll be talking about all those things. So stay tuned and follow us on social media so that you can see when we post our next one. And I wanted to introduce something at the end of every podcast. And I'm kind of catching Sheila off guard here, but I know she's got plenty to share on this. I would love to attach a recipe of the week for every podcast that we do. And
yes.
Sheila, I know I didn't let you prep for this, but it's feeling like fall in Texas. It's like a high of 70 something, kind of dreary, but kind of fall. We just talked about mom life. What is your go-to recipe for the fall weeknight for the busy mom?
Ooh, fall weeknight for the busy mom. Let's see. It's probably going to be a simple dump it all in a pot stew.
Ooh, yes.
And if there's time, maybe a little side of cornbread. And if there's not, you can always get one of those instant ones. Just mix it up.
Your kids will never know the difference.
Nope, it's all good. It's all good.
I love it. A dump in one stew for the fall. Well, I'm going to get the recipe from Sheila after we're done with this, and I will post it when I post this podcast. So you will have the recipe ready to go when you listen to this. You can bake along. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
Thanks.
Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl. Well, Miss Lindy, my Miss Lindy. Well, I love that little girl. Well, Miss Lindy, my Miss Lindy.